So Patrice Evans here. We're still in the series on how to attract the right woman. And I actually have a course that's called Attract the Right Woman Method. And what we're doing is we're taking all the things that I've learned from my experience when I felt the same pains that you were feeling. If you are a young, empathic, Christian, successful young man between 25 and 32, you may have had the same problems I had where you just kept attracting the wrong person. You already had your degrees, you're already working hard, you already have your life all set. And then you connect with somebody that you feel like you loved. You already went through all the steps that you thought you're supposed to go through based on what you knew, based on however you were raised. And you're like, I did everything. I checked all the boxes. This is all I know to do. And you find the person and that person's toxic. That person is negative. That person is trying to undo all that hard work that you did your whole life, right? You finally get out of that and then you have it again. So we talked about breaking out of that cycle. But what I want to talk about today, to go from that to where I am now, where I've been with my husband for 8 years, courtship for the first year, 7 years of marriage. We both were in that situation. And what I have now is a joyful, lasting marriage where Jesus is at the center and, we're both professionals, and I have actually been a blessing. My husband travels and he says, I'm so grateful to have a godly woman that I can rest in my mind knowing that you are waiting there for me. You're praying for me while I'm on the road, and I don't have to worry about you because I know you. I know that you love the Lord. I know that you honor him, honor yourself, and honor our marriage. And so this is the kind of woman that you are looking to meet, a Proverbs 31 woman, a woman that is traditional, a woman that loves the Lord and lets the man be the lead, but in a way where she can still have her calling. And that's what we have demonstrated in our marriage. So this is what I want to help you find. And I've helped my son find, and I'm helping my son-in-laws and all of the young men in my life. I have actually blessed them a lot. So I definitely have been led to do this for you. So what we talked about was breaking the cycle, but what I want to talk about is identifying what got me and my husband in those situations to begin with. Sure, we understand we're empaths, so we talked about that. But what happened to us that got us in a place where we were so vulnerable like that? Why don't we already know boundaries and all those things? What happened to us to make us that vulnerable? So aside from being empaths, aside from the fact that we don't all know, we're not raised knowing red flags necessarily, especially with this modern day and with modern women that are more intricate, they're very different in the way that you can read them. It's not as easy to read them, right? Because a lot of the women that are modern, I had a women's ministry for over 13 years, so I have a heart for women and children's ministries, and I have a ministry now. Saka Core Fit is a dance fitness program. It's a nonprofit, and it's for women and children. So I have a heart for women, and for many years I have. Now, lately, though, we've had a different breed of women growing up. And while they still are my heart, and just as you are my heart as men, I have to be honest with you. If I'm going to be here for you, if you're the one that I'm going to be helping, a young man, I need to be honest with you on the ones I do not support you being with. And so I support you being with the women that I train and teach and I coach to be this way. And so whether they're this way or not, when you are meeting them, they need to be this way. So what got you to a place where you were so comfortable with being treated this way? So by the time these women who are a lower level or dark spirit and they're negative women that are considered, a lot of them are considered modern women, come to you, and now you are like a prey. And a lot of them can be narcissistic, sociopathic. If you want me to do a video on letting you know how women's narcissistic traits show off different from men, I would love to share that with you. And you need to know this stuff. So we will comment below if this is something you want. So what happened to you? How are you, like, when you think back at those relationships, why am I okay with the way she was acting or talking to me or whatever? Well, something happened to you when you were younger. Something happened, and they called it an adverse childhood experience. And somehow, when you were younger, you were spoken to in that way. You were allowed, not that you allowed it because you were so young, this was your formative years. But somehow you were treated that way, and you were told that this was okay to be treated that way. So this is where, when you're a low-level empath, meaning that you're at the baby stages of being an empath and you're growing, to be at the higher level. Or if we want to call it lighter and stronger, you can call it whatever you want to, but I'm going to call it low level, high level for now. If you're at that level where you don't know what to do with all this empathic ability, and instead you just fall into what the world wants you to do with it. And a lot of times the most aggressive people in the world are the ones that run things, and those are people who have narcissistic traits. So when you were younger, there were adults around you and older people around you that were narcissistic, and you were still the prey. Even when you were a child, you were the prey. Why? Because you were compliant, you were kind and very forgiving. You might have been honest like me, like a Heyoka and empath, but even so, in a very sweet and loving way. You blamed yourself over blaming somebody else. You probably said sorry a lot. And these were your formative years, so you didn't know how to fight those stronger people in your life. Not only were they adults or older or stronger in some way, or maybe they were a leader, a teacher, or something like that, or a parent, but you were younger. And on top of that, you were an empath. And even as an adult, you would have been more kind and gentle and being a prey. So whatever happened to anyone during childhood that was an adverse childhood experience, that's one thing. But for it to happen to an empath, it's even, I believe, more impactful, because it teaches you to let us walk all over you. Let us get our way. For me, I felt like I was the gopher in the house. I was like Cinderella. We would all be sitting and watching. If it makes you feel better for me to share one of my experiences, but if we were all watching, I grew up with sisters, and there was one set of us, and then we had the youngest one come later. So the three of us were raised together. I was in the middle, so yeah, I was technically in the middle, and the second oldest is what I consider myself. And we would watch TV. We'd be all comfortable watching TV, but somebody wanted something from the kitchen, and they just assumed I was going to be the one. And somehow physically, I just did it. And I got so used to being that person, and there was no adult to really stop that from happening, for me to just slip into that role of being the gopher, the Cinderella. So I was like a real life Cinderella in that sense. And I was not, I got a little bullied from my older sister once in a while, but she was also there to help me. But it was this weird relationship. And, but like a little puppy, came back with a wagging tail, all happy afterwards. Didn't even think about it. She would do some really tough stuff that she felt bad about, and I didn't even notice it. So, but things were happening to me. Even if I didn't notice it, even though I said sorry, even though I let it go, things were happening to me, and things were happening to you. And what was happening is we were forming a schema. We were forming a mindset. We were forming this, we go last. Everybody else goes first. We can handle, and then I started getting the reputation from my mom as being the one that was strong of all of us. So she always would say, oh, you can handle it. You were strong. Well, how unfair was that for me to be raised being told I was strong? So it's almost like it was a twisted thing. I was Heyoka empath. I was strong. I could handle, but I'm human, right? You're human. You were human, and you were a young human that didn't have everything developed yet. You shouldn't have been expected to take on other people's emotions and feelings and things so young, even if you were the empathic person in the family. Now, I know you've heard about roles in the family and all that, and that's something that I don't cover here, but that happens. And when you carry that role in the family, and if you've had any dysfunction in the family where there was a narcissist, a parent, most likely the parent, they were either on drugs, or they had a drinking problem, or they just had the personality of someone who did, because they picked up traits from their parent that did. So that's called a dry drunk. So whatever the case is, an empathic person will just form themselves around it, and they would just kind of lean over to give space, or it's not like a plant that's growing straight. Because they're so respectful of what's going on around them, they're like, no, I'll just grow around this other plant that's in my way. So you're going like this, and this one decides to lean on you. So you're like, oh, well, then I'll just grow around it. So now you're all broken, right? And so now you've grown, and you've grown up, but you're still broken. And how are you broken? Let's just get deep here. In what way are you broken? What caused this dent? What personality trait did you form around so that that's a comfortable person that also taught you how to be good at doing it? A narcissistic person, very likely. A parent, someone you took care of. Meaning take care of is that sometimes you took the caretaker role and that made you imbalanced. So now that you have that space and you're perfectly fitted for another person, so now you grow up and you meet somebody who has very similar traits to your mother, father, whoever that was, and they see how good you are and guess what happens? Guess what happens? You have that open for that next narcissistic person to come in. It's comfortable, unfortunately, to you and to them. And unless someone on the outside comes in and helps you see that this is an unhealthy bond, they call that a trauma bond, because what you're truly bonding with here are characteristics of the original abuser. And you got so comfortable in that you don't realize it, but you are, when I say attract the right woman, you are attracting someone that fits this and don't even realize it. In the way that you walk, your nonverbals. I'm an expert communicator, so what I do is I help you as a leader with your communication skills. So we start with the nonverbal communication skills. So you're nonverbally walking around with certain facial expressions, the way that you talk, maybe you're saying sorry, whatever those key things are that they look for. Why? Because maybe somebody else when they were younger did it. And whatever they did that let them get like that, they're looking for someone like that. This is unhealthy bond right here. Trauma bonds. And until you straighten yourself out, which is going to be painful because you've been in this position for very long. But until you straighten yourself out where they have nowhere to go but bounce off, and now you can attract somebody who's used to that. Make sense? Until you do that, you're not going to break the cycle. You're not going to get the right person. You have to identify when you were younger, who did that? How did that happen? And in what ways do you need to straighten up? In what ways that didn't happen? Was it physical abuse? Was it verbal abuse? Was it neglect? Was it just gaslighting? Not just gaslighting, but when I say just meaning, and I definitely want to take that word out because gaslighting is what my story is about. It's one of the most dangerous ways to get abused because you have wounds that no one can see. So no one stops to ask you how you're doing. So you're wounded, but no one can see those wounds. They're not a punch in the face or anything. Right? My mother got abused physically and verbally and emotionally, but mostly physically, very, very largely physically. So my father was a malignant narcissist. And so I watched that as an empath. You can imagine how painful that was for me, someone who feels for other people, especially the most important person in my life, my mom. So that's something trauma to come out of, isn't it? But as a high-yoke empath, we have an unusual ability to be a psychologist for ourselves and others. So that's how I had this resilient joy that's so amazing. And I have, spoken to therapists later on in life, but how did I make it from the younger years, So how do you make it out of this adverse childhood experience that you might have had that now you look good on the outside, you're showing up doing work and everything looks fine and nobody can see this bent normally, or even some people might notice it, but they don't think anything of it. They just think you're a really nice person that's extremely conformative and nice and everything. It's those people who are predators to praise that see it very well and they seek you out and they listen to you and notice, oh, that's just like mom was with me. I'm zeroing in. And then they do techniques to get you into them. And you might hear me, I might do a video about it. They love bomb and they mirror and they do all those things to get you. Very charismatic in the beginning, but once they get you, now they're going to continue to do what your original abusers do. You're comfortable is what you know. No one's ever taught you otherwise. You're just going to keep that momentum until something stops it and helps you change it so that you can get a new momentum. So just know you're not going to stop that momentum with a degree. That's what my book's about. With being beautiful, with being talented, with just all that. No, you've got to do the work in here to straighten up, right? Amen. So that's how you identify the blocks. You go back and you have to find out what that was. And we do that in my course, Attract the Right Woman Method. And I really would love to help you with that if this is something that you would like my help with. So if you want to click on my webinar and you can look at this more in depth, I talk really more in depth about this and give you a better idea of how I do this in the course to get you from that point to the next point. This is something the Lord has led me to do and has given me the power to do as a high-yoke empath and a healer. So go ahead and look at the webinar if you want to know more. And if you are ready to work with me, go ahead and click on my Calendly link and we can get started on me seeing how I can help you and what ways do you need the help, okay? Know also that at the time of this video that I posted it, the Lord also gave me in my heart to put some kind of ministry together as well for a short time for only 25 men, 25 different men to have an ability to be blessed by him. So if that's something that fits you well, let me know about that too. Okay. So if you do want to work with me long term to really make it from A to Z, like really get there and have someone there to help you get there so you can attract the right woman God has for you. Whether she's modern or not, there are women that have a modern way about them, but they're traditional. And they want a man to be the lead, but they also want to be able to be who they are. And that's what I teach you how to do as a leader, an empathic leader in my course. So go ahead and click on those links, and I look forward to talking to you. Stay tuned for our next video about a little bit more about these topics and how to identify the blocks, okay? All right, see you in the next video. Bye.